friends. This is the Name Team podcast where we talk about the logic behind virality because marketing is not just logic, it's culture, and our podcast decodes both. And with that, we have a couple fun things to kick off with today, Sonia.
Yeah. So Tom Cruise is out there promoting the F1 movie, which I think adds more fuel to my fire that he has completely reworked his image and is now I think we're gonna find that more movie studios and like actors, directors that he's worked with are gonna try to get him to go to their movie premieres. So this one is an obvious, like, of course he's attending because Joseph Kosinski, the Top Gun Maverick director, directed this movie, and then also his ex co-star in Interview with the Vampire, Brad Pitt, is starring in it. He's gonna be making the rounds. So his status as King of Hollywood has definitely been solidified in my book.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, Hollywood has their biggest influencer, and it's one of the biggest movie stars.
Yeah,
like that's pretty cool that he's supporting some past colleagues and stuff. That's nice. I mean, like we said. You know what? Gotta hand it to Tom Cruise, the movie star, like the brand, like good on him.
Yeah, definitely. So, I hope that it's not obviously just the biggest movies out there, but that he'll be supporting some like indies and other smaller movies and, different that aren't just like movie blockbusters, right?
Yeah.
Like he's got so much more power now. Like let's see him, put some of that behind smaller films that probably wouldn't get as much attention if it weren't for the fact that Tom Cruise was there attending it. So, good on him.
Yeah, pretty cool. And then the other thing I really want to talk about that I was even more excited about was Red Lobster. I think you have some updates for us, and I really want to know.
Yeah. So someone tweeted that they have a new menu ideas that they're adding, basically a sangria flight, seafood boil, and then $5 drinks. So I really think they're starting to narrow in on their ICP or ideal customer profile of who's going to be going. And it seems to be working because it's building really some organic posting on Twitter. And hopefully, some of those people just start turning up at Red Lobster. But I was going to propose that that's what we should go with the husbands, and you can wear your romper, and we will have some flights of sangria.
Yeah, no, I would love that. That would be so much fun. Okay, we're so doing that.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, with that, we have to talk about some marketing stuff.
Yes. So I want to talk about Clueley's Wild Ride. So last week they announced that Andreessen Horowitz had funded their seed round at $15 million. And they created a video kind of announcing that, which had, social network vibes. And it's getting all this hype because he created this software that will help you cheat in your interviews with big companies. He got ousted from Columbia because of this. So he's basically using all this attention to grow his company, and it seems to be working. So I kind of want to talk about some lessons that you as a founder and as a startup can take from this, because obviously this isn't going to work for everybody, right? Not everybody's going to be able to kind of, take these vibes and like grow them, but maybe that's not the worst thing because not most companies are going to be building a cheating software, So let's talk about the things that you can do. One of the things here is that modern marketing requires both product excellence and superior distribution. It is no longer enough for you to build an excellent product. You have to be able to distribute that and to get in front of people and get as many eyeballs as possible. And I think that's one thing that he's doing really well. He's starting with an attention first strategy in order to become as visible as possible. So the CEO, Roy Lee, isn't just doing interviews. He's literally the star of all the viral videos. So I see him showing up on TBPN almost weekly, which is kind of wild to think about. And then he's the star of most of the viral marketing videos that they put out there. So it's getting him more attention, he sticks to the message, which is, that he's kind of like an outsider and, is getting attention because he's not fitting in the mold of, the elite strata of like the Harvard and Columbia of, Amazon, which is one of the companies that he applied for and then ended up not getting the job because they found out he was cheating. And then at YC as well. So I think this is something else that with what we mentioned up top with Tom Cruise, that it's shifting him becoming kind of like the narrative and like the voice of like the industry. And one thing I think that is working really well is that he's using it as what he said is an enterprise Trojan horse in order to get the attention for the product that they're selling to enterprise companies. And I think what works really well here is that it's kind of shifted from being a, cheating product to being a sales product, which if you really think about it, sales is kind of always going to feel like, a little grimy. People don't like being sold to. So it's kind of the perfect like industry for it to be in, because people already get those vibes anyway. And so now they're shifting over to like, we're going to help you make sales by making it feel as if you're cheating by getting all this information from people via their AI desktop app. And then one of the other things that I've started noticing is that companies are starting to become media engines, not just product companies. Another viral video that came out was showing their marketing hires recently. And so those are all essentially influencers that they've hired. Also, before that, hired 60 plus content creator interns who were like pumping out TikToks daily and essentially created like a content factory of showing the product and then, raising the profile of Cluely itself. Their actual product, their stealth AI assistant, matches their edgy marketing. And so they seem to be selling something that feels forbidden and their marketing is leaning into that. Yeah. So did you see the ad, Amanda?
I didn't see a lot of this, but it does have me thinking about, what people can apply more broadly from this. Because I think the big thing really is that I think, I think any kind of new product or service or whatever, right? Any new brand has to be disrupting some kind of status quo. Otherwise, what's the point?
Right.
So I think what they're doing, something that people can learn from is how can you best convey that you are disrupting the status quo? Like, what are the things you're doing that's kind of punching up at the problem? What are some things you can shed light on? Like I think something that's interesting here is that it's just revealing more about some of these interview processes, right? Like, not everyone's going to interview at Columbia, right? Or at Amazon, but what is that like? I think those are things that people are really curious about. And I think the overall takeaways, I think, are pretty broadly relatable. So I think that's partly part of, why it's been working so well for them.
Yeah, I definitely think you've hit on something there. The whole idea of what it's like to be a part of like the elite and like what it means to gatekeep those circles, right? I think part of what people are glomming onto is that they seem to be saying like, I could do this, but I don't want to do it. And like, here's why, because your process is stupid. And here's how to get around that.
For sure.
I think it's fitting the vibes of what like a lot of people are feeling these days, that things are not fair, that status matters more than it should, that it has nothing to do with your actual talent. And so by hitting these like marks over and over, it's really finding the type of consumer that feels this way, and that wants to kind of break down those barriers, which is why I think the fact that they're shifting into sales is like the perfect industry for them. One thing though, especially for companies, your reputation and the trust that you build matters a lot. So are they going to be able to get enough early adopters that makes their whole start in like the whole being, of cheating being like the main thing that they're promoting, like quell the resistance that like people that, the normies, that eventually you have to sell to, right? Like it's not enough to just sell to like early adopters and to early stage companies. Eventually it's all going to rely on your reputation. So are you going to like become the default sales tool fast enough before people kind of, feeling the ick of like the fact that they've built that reputation based on cheating? Yeah, so that's the only thing that I see could be, a bad thing. And the other thing is, like I said, this isn't going to work for everybody.
Right,
Like
right.
if your industry relies completely on your reputation and, trust and, your status, like you cannot do this, right? So
Mhm.
what are the things that you can do, right? I think obviously, creating content that shows that you're at the forefront of your industry, whether through like thought leadership of like the CEO or like who's building the product can work. And like that's something that you should focus on. And then also realizing that like content creation and creating, those marketing channels for you to like, promote yourself is going to be more important than ever. Like I said, like it's not enough to just build a great product. You have to be able to distribute it and people have to learn about you in some way because there are so many companies being built right now. What's making you different? you know?
Yeah.
So that's something to think about there.
Yeah, I think I also want to talk about their, sort of content farm, right? Or not, let's not say farm, their
Yeah.
content factory, right?
Yeah.
Where they've hired a bunch of people to create content. I
Mhm.
think where that's really smart is, you think about the nature of this product that they're selling, and it's going to be pretty hard to get some user generated content, right? I don't think
Right.
anyone's going to want to brag about using it, at least
Right.
not publicly,
Yeah.
right? So I think it's really smart that they have hired content creators so that they have people doing this for the brand.
Yeah.
So it's the brand saying it and it's sort of and it's the brand that's on the hook for it.
Mhm.
They're not waiting on users to be able to say it for them. Although I'm sure if a user wants to put their neck on the line like that,
Yeah.
that's going to be their issue, right? But
Yeah.
all this to say, I think a really smart takeaway here too is, kind of know the stories or think about the things that your customers can say or tell better than you can. And then think about what you can say or what is better for you to say instead of your customers, and for this kind of thing where inherently that's risk, right? You don't want to
Mhm.
ask your customers to do something risky for you. If you're the one creating that product,
Right.
you should be the one on the hook for that risk, right? So I think this is a good way for them to continue to own that.
Yeah, agree. Um, Another key takeaway for me is that we're shifting away from the build it and they'll come to attention first, product second. I'm talking
Yeah.
about their enterprise shift because that's what they said that they're building, but
Hmm.
no one's really coming out and saying that they're using that yet.
Yeah, I don't think they
And
will.
right. And even the product that they said that they built before that, started this whole thing, is not really the product that they have. Right.
Hmm.
So a word of caution here is eventually people are going to come to you and be like, so what are you actually building?
Yeah,
And is it actually good?
yeah,
Because as we've seen, there is a whole graveyard of companies that had a lot of hype that have now failed.
yeah,
Some major ones, WeWork, Theranos, Bolt, Fast, Humane AI most recently. And, those companies don't really exist anymore, right?
hmm,
So that's something that eventually they're going to have to, put up or shut up, right? With the product that people are actually using and that, they're actually selling. So, obviously they have some time. They're just raising right now. Andreessen Horowitz is obviously going to help them out with, their own brand and reputation behind it. But yeah, eventually they're going to have to show that they've built an actual functioning product and
yep,
that people are actually buying it. Right.
yeah, yeah,
Otherwise, it doesn't matter how much attention you got. Like if you don't actually have a company, you're going to end up failing.
yeah, absolutely. All right, with that, our next topic is I want to talk about the fact that we really are living in a zero click world, right? So, years back I coined the phrase zero click content to describe the pattern that we've been seeing online and the way people are posting on social media, where it is native to platform or where it's what we're seeing a lot of, right? Of the content and the accounts that are growing most quickly and getting most success is the kind of content where that it is native to platform, standalone value. there isn't a reason to click really, or they don't prioritize content that has links. And so you can get a lot of value just from that given social platform or any platform really that I'm referring to. And um, that's kind of the way you grow your account. You get more recognition, you increase impressions, and then over time, people get to know you, and then when they're ready, they'll buy from you. And the reason I want to talk about this is because recently, Meta went on the record, right? Of now they're saying, oh, look, Facebook is now explicitly saying that your links are killing your reach. And you can see the screenshots in this Social Media Today article by Andrew Hutchinson, which shows that it advises users to drop their links into the comments instead of the main post, like in the caption. And one of their own transparency reports, I believe from Q2 of this year, Q2 of 2025, shows that 97.3% of all Facebook post views are now going to content with no external link. So this really confirms the core principle of zero-click marketing, right? Which is that platforms reward content that keeps users engaged inside the feed, and native first standalone value content, aka zero-click content, is no longer optional. Now it's mandatory. And we are just seeing that increasingly, marketing is getting pushed to the point that we all need to optimize to get seen, right? We need to optimize for impressions, optimize for people to see us in some way, optimize for even just mentions, not even links to us, hoping that people talk about us, mention us in hopes that all these signals that are created online will eventually increase your visibility and hopefully conversion. One thing I also want to say is I do wonder if and when we will see other platforms confirming any of this similarly, right? Because
I mean, does it matter? Facebook, Twitter have already done. I feel like LinkedIn
I mean,
has
I
kind of.
I think it matters in that it might show, it would at least confirm it,
I
versus
think at this point,
people.
just do it. I
Yeah,
think
I know, but but it doesn't. But that's not enough for the executives who are like, show it to me, show me the proof, right? Because I think in our world, we're in startup world where we have direct lines to the founders that we know, that we work with, CEOs that we work with, and we have, well, I think, a little bit more trust in them. But I think there is still a lot of more traditional companies and teams where executives are like, show me the proof. Is this true? Well, let's just do it my way for a while. Fine, we can test it your way. And I think the more that we can make noise around this, right? And the more that marketers are able to see this stuff, then the more that they can get that buy-in to create content or to work on marketing campaigns that are optimized for some kind of standalone value or impressions that will ultimately reach people.
Yeah, I think for that, you're right. A lot of corporations move a lot slower than startups. So for that, I would suggest data, data, data. You might not be able to get, LinkedIn to come out and explicitly say that this is what they're doing. But what you can do is approach your executive team and say, look, Twitter and Facebook have already confirmed this. If you want to test it out on LinkedIn or, TikTok, what you do is say like, I want to test this out for like a week. Let me show you what it says, and tell them like, this is the experiment I want to set up. These are this is my hypothesis, and this is the results that I plan on seeing. And then we can go from there, and then do the test, and then come to your executives and tell them that. A lot of the times that I had problems convincing my executives of something is that I wasn't coming to them with the experiment that I wanted to run. I used to work for Ernst & Young. So all these, bigger organizations that aren't as used to having to respond to something as quickly as startups want to kind of set up those experiments so that they know what is happening and what the end result is going to be from it. And so you have, that power. You have the power to do that. And if, they don't want you to do it on like the main account, maybe there's a separate account that like you can try it on, or the opposite. Maybe you can do it from like the company account, but you can't do it from like the executive account yet. So these are like different things that you can think about like how you can kind of take ownership about these hypotheses that you're like reading about.
Yeah. And I think, and I would also just add to that, keep testing things in even really small ways, Like, it doesn't have to be these large scale tests. They
Mhm.
can just be like small tweaks that you make in the day-to-day social decisions that you make.
Mhm.
And compare notes whenever you can with
Yeah.
friends in other sectors or ideally similar types of audiences or industries.
Mhm.
What I will share here on the pod is like, it's near impossible to get anybody to click on anything. And I
Yeah.
feel like more and more, anytime the social platforms even get a whiff that you're sending people off platform, they'll kill your reach. Like,
Yep.
whenever I mention the podcast, whenever I mention Mean Team on like LinkedIn, I feel like immediately like the reach is like it's crushed.
Mhm.
Anytime I tag a brand page, again, crushed reach. And I'll see that I would say on average, I get probably 1/3 the reach of a regular post for me. Um, and that my baseline kind of being an average post for me will be like around 100 likes. So that's kind of my baseline. And I think I'll usually be like around 10,000 to 12,000 impressions. Anytime I even hint about someone going off platform, it'll automatically like top out at like, if I'm lucky, maybe 4,000 impressions.
Yeah, this is what those AI bots are doing at these
Yeah,
companies now. Is just,
yeah.
reading. I mean, obviously they're like analyzing your text, but yeah, I'm sure there is some sort of ding that they put on in order to do that.
So I think the big takeaway, friends, is keep testing, use data, compare notes with friends, and zero-click marketing is here. Get on board.
Yeah. Or go completely buck wild like Cluely did and the
Yeah.
CEO, right? Because that's the way that they're getting attention is
Yeah.
by having it all be native within whatever platform they're creating, whether that's
Mhm.
TikTok, Twitter, by going onto the news sources that are now directly into Twitter. I think that's another thing I want to call out here is that we're seeing the rise of news sources, independent news sources within Twitter because they're posting their videos directly onto the platform. You have to find the new avenues for you to be able to get in front of your user, and your user now lives directly on social media.
Mhm.
So you kind of have to be on there. And so the main thing here is analyze your ICP, your, ideal customer profile, learn where they are and get on that platform.
Yeah.
Whether that's, LinkedIn, TikTok, even Reddit, learn that channel in order to be able to promote yourself in a way that does not feel like you're selling directly to the person, because that will also, not do very well.
All right, next topic.
So F1 driver Valtteri Bottas just went viral announcing a Cadillac seat inspection. And I kind of want to talk about how influencer marketing can create marketing gold for brands without the brand being necessarily like at the front and center of it. So Valtteri Bottas was on TikTok looking at a Cadillac car and like asking about like what he thinks about the seat. So now people are like questioning like, wait, is this a seat announcement or isn't it? And so he's getting that attention before he would actually, be in the seat, but starting to kind of lay the groundwork now for a potential announcement later. I will say that if it doesn't work out, if he doesn't actually get the seat, it will be super awkward for this to even have happened. But I assume that, the company is coordinating with him, especially because F1 had a very famous case of a driver and the car company not being in agreement about what was going to happen with one of the seats. I was talking about the Oscar Piastri and Alpine situation that happened in 2022. When Alpine went ahead and made the announcement that their reserve driver, Oscar Piastri, was going to be joining them for 2022. And Oscar Piastri basically came out with a tweet that went viral saying it appears that Alpine made an announcement without notifying me, and ultimately saying I will not be driving for Alpine, which ended up being super awkward for Alpine and made them look like, just like they were showing their asses because like people were like, wait, why would you make this announcement without talking to your driver? Another call out that I want to have here is that this is one of those ways that influencer marketing really works is that you allow the influencer to, do the announcement in a way that is natural to them, and that you're not just talking about your brand, right? Like no one was really going to care about Cadillac necessarily. It's more about the fact that Botas might get a seat, and he has kind of cultivated enough of his own brand and fans to be able to announce it in a way that people care about that, where it's like people want him to get a seat. And so he's leaving these like little Easter eggs for like people. And so it makes people more excited to like talk about it.
Yeah. I think a big thing too, sorry, I just wanted to like, I very much agree. Like, I just also wanted to add, like, the really important thing here is that he has the ownership of that. In athlete marketing or even just creator marketing, right? More broadly, it's a really important thing is to give that creator or athlete a strong sense of ownership.
Yeah.
Where even though you, the brand, are giving you're giving the dollars, right? Like it's for your product or whatever you're offering, like it's your thing, and that makes sense. It's hard not to think of, yeah, talk about my product, like do it in this way. Like, that's of course very understandable, but I think in these successful moments, we see that it's because the brand is putting that in the hands of the star, so to speak.
Yeah,
Where like now
like-
he gets to talk about his seat, right? Where it's not so much of like, oh, and then this is why this brand is so great. Like that can come later when it makes sense
Yeah.
or when it's earned in that way,
Yeah. I honestly think that this created a lot more buzz than if they had just announced that he is their driver for, the 2026 season. This kind of like made people have to like guess and like talk about the fact that we're guessing like, wait, is this the announcement or isn't it? It's funny, he got to like use his natural humor to like talk about the seat and like being in F1 again versus having it be like a stale corporate message, which seems to be a lot of what happens when you let corporations and the legal team tell you what to say. So this was like him being able to talk about it in that way. And one thing that I kind of want to call out too is that he's kind of been building this up since he left Mercedes. Like when he was at Mercedes, he didn't get to like joke around as much and have as much of a personality. And so I remember he basically got like an Australian mullet. And so he really took on this like persona of having like the mullet with like bleach blonde hair and, being like a surfer and like this whole thing. So that's kind of become part of like his personality and like what has built up his brand. So this is allowing them to kind of build up the attention in a longer format than if they kind of just, made the announcement now. So yeah. I thought it was fun.
That is fun. All right, last topic. So I want to talk about Canva's out-of-home takeover. So out-of-home advertising, right? These are billboards or, displays you would see like in an elevator or at a major bus stop. That's out-of-home advertising. And Canva currently has a takeover at London's Waterloo Station, where they've transformed 14 billboards into what is essentially live commentary on the design process. So all the commentary, like all these billboards, represent like common mistakes or requests that designers hear all the time. So like one of them says, turns out the 16 by 9 was meant to be 9 by 16. Right? So like a common, mistake that would be addressed with a designer. Or they've also been explaining some of their tools by showing it, not explaining it. So there's one where they have like a poster that plugs Canva's magic resize tool or their background remover tool, where the poster shows the background cut out, revealing the brick wall, the actual brick wall behind it. So it's really cool to see,
cool.
That's what the background remover is, right? So it's conveying it super literally. And then they also have in one of the billboards a large Canva logo. And the caption is, when make the logo bigger goes a bit too far, right? So a lot of these are just very like fun, kind of tongue in cheek, really easy to understand, right? I think, of course, any designer can laugh at that, but I think any marketer or the person on the requesting side of design gets that. Right? The whole 16 by 9, 9 by 16. Us non-designers, we have often made that mistake, right? Or something similar. Or for, again, us non-designers, it's, a background erasing tool. Let me see that, right?
Yeah.
So I think they are doing such a great job at this, and I want to call it out because out of home advertising is like that's like the oldest marketing discipline, right? Ever since those like Coca-Cola billboards from back in the day. So it's a classic program, but Canva is doing it just extraordinarily well. And I feel like it's just you got to recognize good marketing when you see good marketing. And I think the big thing that marketers, anyone listening, can learn from this is look, out of home is expensive. Um, so not everybody has the budget for it. But I think we can all get a really good lesson in the example of showing, not telling. Like I think if you look at any of the photos of these campaigns, you could immediately see like, oh, this is really smart because it just shows what the pain point is. It shows what the solution is. You're right. It shows it all very visually, literally visually, without having to explain or set the whole thing up in like a 4-minute video. So I think it's just really cool and like really simple and elegant and worth talking about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this reminds me of the Aura Ring campaign, right? Which is also heavy on billboards. So maybe that's part of the a takeaway here, or as we were talking about zero-click marketing being on the rise, maybe we're also seeing off-platform ad campaigns rising as well, right? Last week we talked about how streaming ads on TV are becoming more accessible for smaller brands. Probably because, you want to start being able to compete with, social media and, all the online digital ads like, Google ads, search ads, keyword ads, social media ads and all that. Like, how are we kind of giving people more options to like get in front of consumers? So I think this is great. Yeah, it'd be great to find out like if, billboards can become a little bit more accessible for companies,
Yeah, yeah.
because that would be cool. I think that's also one of those things where as a marketer, I've always wanted to have like a billboard campaign, just
Oh,
like
for
so you can,
sure. Yeah, same
take
here.
a
And I
photo
think
with it.
and I think so. I mean, I think if you were to like really try to keep a pulse on it, sometimes you can buy like remnant space on a
Mhm.
billboard for not that much money.
Yeah,
I don't want to like say exact dollars because it could be
right.
wrong, but like
Yeah,
I'll just say it doesn't have to be like 10 grand plus
right.
sometimes. But that might be if you're really scoping it out and keeping an eye on things.
Mhm.
Um,
Honestly,
but
that's
yeah.
probably why they chose Waterloo, as
Mm,
opposed to some of the more major stations. So they could have, I mean, 14 billboards. Like that's you're essentially taking over an
mhm,
area. So I wonder if that's like a way to, do it, where it's like you're taking
yeah.
over smaller places are going to cost a little bit less versus
Mhm,
like being in like Times Square, right? Which
yeah. Yeah.
those campaigns are like super super expensive, right? But if you're making it kind of be like a takeover, the attention that you're getting because it's like so visual and so like out of character for that area is probably giving them a lot more eyeballs than they would have gotten if they had just kind of been on any at a bigger London station.
Yeah, no, Sonia, that's exactly it.
Okay.
Because now they can look at the incremental lift
Mhm.
in overall performance, right?
Yeah.
So instead of like doing one billboard in like 10 major cities, it
Mhm.
would be really hard to figure out what's actually effective.
Right.
Now they can have this concentrated smaller area and they can look at things like if there's a lift in search in that area or like if they're able to attribute revenue, which sometimes they can based
Mhm.
on a certain region, like that would help them figure out how successful the campaign ultimately is. And I think that's kind of like the ideal sort of out of
Okay.
home program where
Right. Right.
you
Right.
can see that where you can see the overall lift and you can see overall measurement and it's not so much about one-to-one attribution, right? But they can see like, okay, after this time period of like 3 weeks or a month or whatever it
Mhm.
is, they can see more definitively like, oh, this was effective here. We were seeing more people search for our product or convert around this time. But
Yeah.
yeah.
It's slightly different from what I was trying to say. What I was trying
Mm,
to say is that um we are finding out about this online and through like all the like press hits that they got. Even though Waterloo Station is kind of random, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's like
true.
they're getting more eyeballs because they took over basically a random station in London and are now getting additional eyeballs across, everywhere internationally, right? Like we're finding out about this here in the US. And so that was like what made it successful to me. And so thinking about your campaigns in that way, it doesn't
Mhm,
have to be the biggest billboard or one billboard in, Times Square or
mhm.
in like, downtown London, but like is there a smaller city that you could take over where the fact that you did this takeover is what is making the news, not the campaign itself?
Yeah, no, that is a really good point. Yeah, I think that's really spot on too.
Mhm.
Because it's also like, as we're talking about it, we're not talking about it like, oh, Canva had a cute billboard somewhere,
Right.
right? We're talking about the full story. Like,
Right.
we're talking about the multiple types of billboards that they had, the
Hmm.
different kinds of messaging that they're conveying. Like, it's a cohesive story, right?
Hmm.
Like, we're not talking about one-off thing.
Yeah,
And to your point, right? Like, I think if it were just one billboard, even if it was in Times Square, we wouldn't be talking about it. It would just be
definitely.
like, oh, cool, they had some money and they put it
Mhm.
there.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, if anything, it'd be like, oh, they just kind of wasted, money there. Like, obviously, billboards in Times Square work. Like, some of the more memorable
Yeah.
ones that I remember are like when they did the Twitter, like people talking about what they were going to achieve at some point, and then having Twitter kind of like say like, oh, look, this they talked about this
Oh,
on Twitter, right? Like,
that was a
uh,
good
that
campaign.
was a really
Yeah.
good campaign because
Yeah.
there's
That's
like
good.
it's real people putting out their tweets, and that's how they're putting the
Yeah.
campaign out there. So that I think is like really successful. One other thing I want to point out here is the news hits that you get when your marketing campaign is different than what is expected. I
Mhm.
think this is also what worked really well with the Valtteri Bottas announcement, because it wasn't just a regular announcement of like, hey, he's in the uniform and he's in the car. Like this is
Mhm.
like, no, he's talking about it in a different way, in a way that matches his humor. And so they ended up getting a lot more eyeballs because of the difference in the way that they made the announcements that doesn't fit kind of like the template. So I think there's a lot of creativity that you can put towards your campaigns if you start thinking about things not and not trying to compete with everybody else, right? That's another thing that when we were talking about Cluely, right? It's like you're not going to succeed by copying what they do. You have to be able to put that in the way that is going to most benefit you and your company. And what works for them is not necessarily going to work for you. You have to customize it to work for your company.
Yeah. All right. Shall we roll into some key takeaways now?
Yeah, roll into takeaways. Yeah, so I think for me, huge takeaway for Cluely is that attention and distribution matters a lot more than the product right now, which kind of sucks if you feel like your product is like the best and it's really changing things, and that belief that like if you build it they will come. It's just not the way that things are working right now. So you really have to look at new avenues in order to get those eyeballs that you want. They're doing it by, being strategic in their controversy, and it's working for them because the type of product that they're building and the space that they're building in, it makes sense. But that's not going to be true of most companies. So how can you kind of raise your profile, raise your product's profile by kind of claiming as much attention as you can? And another thing is to build on what I was saying from the Canva billboard idea, is that like thinking about ideas and being creative and out of the box. I really hate to say out of the box because it seems so cliche now, but it's like, how are you thinking about how you're promoting yourself in a way as like a total campaign and not just a one-off idea of things that you're like putting out there?
I think my takeaway for Cluely will be, um, as a marketer, like really know what messages you want to own and what you want somebody else to own. Like what are the messages or the things that you say and do that you as the brand own, but then what do you want your customers to say? What do you want co-marketers to say? Or, the creators that you work with, right? Really think about how that messaging is different, because what I think is great about Cluely is that whatever riskiness there is, they're basically absorbing that risk by being the ones who are creating the content.
I like that. That's a really smart takeaway about like a thing that doesn't seem very obvious, but now that you've mentioned it, I was like, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense because you're right. Many other users are not going to want to admit that they use the software.
Yeah,
So they
but
kind of
does
have
it
to do it themselves.
totally? But doesn't
Hmm.
mean they won't buy, right? Like they'll just
Exactly.
like buy it quietly.
Yeah. So, but hey, as long as you're making those sales, that's all that matters.
Yeah, it's true. All right, our next piece on Meta encouraging zero-click marketing. Look, here we've heard it from Meta, right? Virtually all Facebook post views go to content with no external link. So marketers take heed, I mean, figure out what content you can create that has standalone value. Don't be reliant on clicks because you're probably not going to get it anyway. And even if you do put in that link, your reach is going to get killed. So collect the data, make your point, test what you can, and share notes with your peers.
Yeah. For me, the takeaway is that you have more power over like your content now than ever. So like, be creative with it. What's going to make you stand out to like your customer? You already know that they're in these channels. You know that they're going to be on LinkedIn and like Facebook, Twitter. You know that they're going to do that. So figure out the type of content that works on those platforms and then create that content,
Yeah.
like you might have to experiment a lot more than you're used to. But maybe that's part of like what's exciting about it is that like, this is the new frontier and that content. Well, I mean, we already knew content is king, right? But like now we're kind of like re-kinging it, For the Valtteri Bottas announcement, I think the big takeaway for me is like let your influencers own their personality and like put out the content that like works for them without trying to like hinder them too much with like your corporate ness of like this is how things should be and this is how we want to display our brand. Like give guidelines. Of course you don't want them to like say something negative or like make it seem controversial, but give them the freedom to take what you want them to announce and like have fun with it because that's going to get you far more eyeballs than if you just kind of announce it in the regular templated format that people are used to.
Yeah. And yeah, I think I'll also just say, like, really emphasize when you engage a creator, especially a star, like a star athlete, really empower them to own their story. Like, figure out how you can, how can you position your partnership together as it's their story and you're the one along for the ride? Even though you're the one who's paying the dollars,
Yeah.
like, I get it, you're writing the checks, but at the end of the day, no consumer is going to care about your story. They're going to care about the individuals. So the more that you align yourself with that, the more successful I think you'll be.
Definitely. The aura of like the celebrity is always gonna shine that light on you a lot more than if you had kind of, you know, ruined that for them.
And then finally, in lessons in out of home advertising from Canva, I really want to just home in on that notion of show, don't tell. Like, just the more clear you can be with your marketing, with your messaging, the better off you'll be. And these are just really great examples of how you can do that.
And then I'd say my takeaway is don't just go for the big shiny thing. And, you have a limited amount of budget. Like, how can you use those dollars to the utmost, right? Like, instead of being in like downtown, New York and Times Square or like in London, they kind of had a little offshoot in Waterloo Station, but they had a 14 billboard takeover, which ended up causing them to have more eyeballs because of the attention that they drew from people admiring the campaign and then from news sources kind of jumping onto it. I saw it because marketers are like sharing this. So think about the greater marketing campaign that you'll have and not just necessarily how you can get the biggest space that you can just because you have the money for it.
And with that, that's our episode for today. If you like Meme Team, please leave us a positive review. Leave us a 5-star review if you can. And subscribe and smash the subscribe button. They don't say that anymore.
I think they say it on YouTube, don't they?
They do. We're on YouTube. So yeah, smash the subscribe button.
Hold on. Is it too cheesy to read one of the?
Let's do it.
Let's do that. I was
I
actually
think
gonna
that's
say,
nice.
yeah.
You should. Yeah.
Oh, we got a new one.
What? This is really nice.
We got
Okay.
2 new ones. We got 20 reviews now.
Wait, that's cool. Friends, if you're still listening, leave us a review. And look, indie podcasts like ours benefit a lot from reviews. And so that's why we ask for it, because it matters. We are an independent podcast. We're not part of some big network where we get the halo of some other brand. It is just me and Sonia getting it done. So your reviews mean a lot to us. And Sonia, you said we had some new ones.
We have 2 new ones. But I'm going to read the latest one that we got 2 days ago. It's super exciting because it's actually a really good one. Okay, so it's titled Marketing Insights That Resonate. This show is a must listen for anyone serious about navigating marketing trends, pop culture, and strategy. Sonia and Amanda are sharp, funny, and incredibly well informed. Wow.
Wow.
What I love most is how they pull back the curtain on real campaigns and trends with insight that only true professionals in the space could provide. So far, each episode has felt like a mini masterclass in brand storytelling and the cultural forces shaping consumer behavior. I'd say if you care about what's happening behind the scenes in marketing and want to stay ahead of the curve, this show definitely belongs in your weekly rotation.
Oh my gosh. That is the best. That is better than I ever could have hoped for. Like, I thought you were going to say, I'm going to read this review. Like this podcast, it's cool.
Yeah.
Like,
Not that those are bad. We have
no, they're not
those as
bad.
well.
Yeah, no, those are great too. We'll take it.
We'll take
It's just
it.
we are verklempt. This is amazing.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. And I'll read the other last one because it came out June 16th. So a week ago. Entertaining, but also educational. I love that this helps me both catch up on pop culture, aka feel cool, but also dig into some of the underlying marketing and communications principles at play. That is amazing. Thank you so much to everyone that leaves us a review because like Amanda said, they matter. When people go and like search for this, people want user generated content.
They do.
And reviews, you know? So if you love something, like go leave a review for them because that way they get more attention and hopefully more listeners.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you, friends. If you want to follow me, if you don't already, I'm at Amanda Nat on the socials. Also at amandanat.com.
And then you can follow me at Sonia Baschez on Twitter, Threads, LinkedIn, all that. But follow us most importantly on YouTube at Meme Team Pod or on Spotify at Meme Team Podcast, which matters a lot more than following me or Amanda.
Yeah.
Do it all.
Okay.
Do it all. Okay.
All right.
Awesome.
See you next week, friends. Bye.